Hello, you're on the channel Ruslan Belov. Today we'll discuss the situation in Ukraine as of April 28, 2025. A lot has happened today. Many events unfolded overnight between the 27th and 28th of April. Well, let's take things in order. Now let's move to the front line, starting with the operational zone of the Kursk troop grouping in the Sumy sector. Today, there are minor adjustments, with the main updates coming from the vicinity of the settlement Dnieper. In these frames, we can see Russian units returning from a mission on quad bikes. They were moving along this tree line, following a route that looked approximately like this. Later, the Russian quad bikes drove into a minefield, damaging several of them. However, these images confirm that, in all likelihood, this tree line is already under the control of the Russian armed forces near the settlement Lokhnya. Yesterday, we noted a small advance in the northern part of this settlement, and today we're receiving reports of an expanded control zone further west, toward Belovody. So we can see that at the moment, the Russian side is aiming to drive a wedge between the settlements of Belovody, Yablunovka, Lokhnya, and Yunakievka, essentially to disrupt logistics and movement, then deal with each settlement individually. It appears that Belovody will likely be the first target, after which Russian units will advance toward Yablunovka and then Yunakievka, forcing Ukrainian troops to retreat. If Russian forces take Yablunovka, the Ukrainian armed forces will lose the ability to supply their grouping across a significant stretch of the front, and will be forced to either retreat, counterattack, or attempt to stabilize the front line. Next, we move to the junction of the Kursk and Belgorod directions. Footage continues to come in of artillery strikes on the settlement Miropolia. We should remind you that the latest news from this sector was the destruction of a bridge over the Sile River, which undoubtedly complicated logistics for the Ukrainian armed forces. However, despite these developments, there's no confirmed information yet that Russian units have begun advancing toward the area between Velika Rybitsa and Miropolie. For now, the front line here remains static. Now let's head north to the Kharkiv direction, more precisely, the northern Kupiansk sector. A lot of important updates are coming from here. We'll start with the northernmost point of the Kupiansk front, the settlement Kamianka. Today, the Russian Defense Ministry announced during its briefing that the Zapad West troop grouping had established full control over Kamianka. Based on their report, we've marked the village as fully under Russian control on the map. Shortly after, just minutes, maybe half an hour later, objective control footage emerged. These clips show separate episodes of Russian assault units clearing Kamianka in different sectors. In these frames, we see strikes on various buildings, including the demolition of a structure near the Kamianka Lyceum. Later, we witness the surrender of Ukrainian troops. The final shots show Russian flags being raised in multiple locations within the settlement. If we return to the map, here, Russian troops captured Ukrainian soldiers. Here, this structure was destroyed, and here a Russian flag was raised. Not all episodes have been geolocated yet, but it's noticeable that the footage comes from the southern, central, and possibly eastern parts of Kamianka. Nothing from the north or northwest. There might have been another flag raised there, which would confirm full control. But based on available geolocations, it seems the northern part might still be in a grey zone, or fighting could still be ongoing. Given the upcoming May holidays, every victory is also a media victory. We'll keep watching. For now, we'll mark the map accordingly and wait for further updates. Meanwhile, intense fighting continues for the northern part of Kupiansk. Heavy battles are raging for Kondrashevka, Rotkovka, Tishchenkovka, and Malaya Shapkovka. On the northwestern edge of Kupiansk, the Ukrainian armed forces maintain reserves that are regularly deployed northward to stabilize the situation. Russian forces, in turn, consistently target these temporary deployment points. To understand the full picture, we need to look at how the situation has evolved since early April. The high concentration of markers around Kondrashevka indicates the most intense combat here. There's also heavy artillery and airstrike activity in the northwestern sector. Since early April 2025, this northwestern block of Kupiansk has faced the most bombardment. Likely because Ukrainian FPV drone operators, reserves, and possibly command centers are stationed here. Strikes are concentrated along the R79 highway, as this is where the UAF moves units north toward Kondrashevka. we're seeing a deliberate, well-planned effort by Russian forces. It's possible that the UAF's defenses in this sector will soon collapse, allowing Russian troops to fully secure Kondrashevka. Recent footage suggests this push is gaining momentum. However, we must remember that fighting along the Kondrashevka-Tishchenkovka-Malaya-Shapkovka line has been ongoing for 1 or even 2 months, so far without decisive results. Now let's move to the southern Kupiansk sector, the Lyman direction. Here, for the first time in a long while, or rather after a brief operational pause, Russian units have managed to restore their combat readiness and pull up reserves. Today, we're seeing new updates on the map. The flower, as some call it, of Novo Pavlivka, Katerinivka and Lyman continues to bloom. Over the past 24 hours and last night, according to various neutral cartographers, the Russian army has expanded its zone of control along almost the entire perimeter of this flower and through the tree lines between Novo Pavlivka, Novolyubovka and Makievka. This stretch of the front line has reportedly come under Russian control, though no official confirmation has been made yet. There are also reports that Russian forces have significantly expanded their control zone, effectively bypassing Nove from the south. Currently, Russian assault units are entering the settlement of Lipov from the south and southeast. This maneuver has a clear objective: to block Ukrainian troops in the central or western part of Nove, cutting off their supply lines and potentially encircling them. If Russian soldiers secure Lipov, Ukrainian forces in Nove will have roughly 48 hours to decide: either retreat northwest toward Redkadub or risk being trapped in a cauldron. Additionally, there are signs that the Russian army has begun advancing toward Lyman, shifting its offensive vector southwest. Today, according to some neutral sources, Russian forces have gained a foothold in the northern and western parts of Kolodezi, effectively launching an assault on the settlement. If Kolodezi falls, it will open an operational path for Russian strikes on the northwestern part of Zarakne and the settlement of Stavki. This would mark the beginning of the battle for Lyman. Next, we move to the Siversk sector, where significant developments are unfolding. Just yesterday, we discussed the intensified activity of Russian artillery and Solntsepiok thermobaric systems in this area, stretching from Serebryansky forestry to Verkhne Kamianska and the southeastern outskirts of Siversk. At the time, we speculated that this bombardment was likely preparation for a ground assault. And today, that prediction has materialized. The first objective control footage shows Russian units on the eastern outskirts of Hryhorivka, which falls under the responsibility of Ukraine's 81st Brigade. In these clips, we see Ukrainian drones striking Russian assault groups as they infiltrate Hryhorivka and occupy former Ukrainian strongholds. One key scene shows a strike on what appears to be an abandoned basement, likely already taken by Russian troops. Officially, the battle for Hryhorivka has begun. If Russian forces push further west toward Serebryanka, the next logical target would be Siversk itself. Losing Serebryanka would make it extremely difficult for Ukraine to hold Verkhne Kamianska, as their positions would face the threat of semi-encirclement or even full encirclement. Finally, we turn to the Kostiantynivka direction, where Russian forces are advancing along 3 axes: Chassiva, Kostiantynivka-Toretsk, Kostiantynivka along the H32 highway, Vozdvizhenka, Kostiantynivka. Let's start with Chassiva. Yesterday, pro-Russian sources reported a breakthrough in Ukrainian defenses in the Shevchenko district, workshop number 2, and the central part of the town. While initial claims lacked geolocated proof, today we're seeing footage of Ukrainian units evacuating central Chassiva in broad daylight, a sign of desperation, as they may not have time to wait for nightfall. The 24th Mechanized Brigade is reportedly pulling back due to high encirclement risks. Separately, Russian forces have allegedly breached Ukrainian lines near Stupokki along the H32 highway. The offensive is unfolding across a wide front, from central Chassiva to Stupochki. Given the current pace, there's a high probability that 80% of Chassiva will fall under Russian control by May 9th, allowing Moscow to declare its complete liberation. Meanwhile, fighting continues along the Toretsk-Kostiantynivka line, particularly near the railway and Highway 05-19, With minor adjustments reported by cartographers today, the situation remains fluid, but the operational tempo favors Russian forces in several key sectors. We'll continue monitoring and updating as more confirmed data arrives. These adjustments have also been confirmed by objective control footage. In this video, we can observe Russian army positions coming under attack by Ukrainian FPV drones. These frames have been geolocated. This is precisely where Ukrainian forces struck forward Russian positions. Meanwhile, the Russian army continues clearing operations in Dnieper, now focusing on its northern sector and southern Dnieper. There is abundant footage of FPV drone strikes targeting Ukrainian armed forces positions in this area. For now, we're only making minor updates to the map, but it's likely that more significant adjustments will follow soon, possibly extending all the way to the southern Dnieper railway station. As for the Kleban-Beek direction, this is perhaps the first time since the offensive began in this sector that we've received almost no updates. The last confirmed news from this area was the entry of Russian units into the southern part of Stromilivka, as reported by neutral and pro-Russian cartographers by the beginning and end of April 28th. No further developments have been reported since. We await additional information, but for now it appears either the pace of the advance has slowed or the Russian army has reached the next Ukrainian defensive line, Alexandropol, Zaria and Romanivka. Progress beyond this point will be more challenging, as Ukrainian supply lines are shorter here, and the area seems to have been fortified while Russian forces were busy securing Tarasivka, Zelenay Pole, Kalinove, Suka-Balka, Valentinivka, and Alexandropol. Next, we turn to the Pakovsk direction, where combat activity has intensified on the eastern flank. Russian forces are advancing toward the H-32 highway across a broad front, aiming not to cross at a single point, but to seize a large stretch, possibly up to 11 kilometers, from Novokonomichne to Novo Pavlivka. Today, objective control footage emerged from the vicinity of Berezivka. While the Russian Defense Ministry had previously claimed control over this village, today's geolocated footage, showing Ukrainian FPV drones striking Russian forward positions, finally confirms it. Most cartographers only updated their maps today to reflect this. Separately, neutral sources report Russian movements northwest of Vodyane-Druhe toward minor rural road intersections near the H-32 highway. A small stronghold near this highway's crossroads appears to be encircled, and Russian forces may soon attempt to fully secure it. At the same time, both neutral and pro-Russian sources confirm the start of assault operations toward Malinivka, with Russian units advancing along a small ravine near Zayachi Yar. Their objective is to reach the southern farms of Malinivka. On the western Pakovsk axis, the map remains largely unchanged, with only minor adjustments reported near Nadivka. Pro-Ukrainian cartographers note that as of April 28th, Nadivka is now under full and stable Russian control. Russian forces are gradually pushing northwest toward Novo Mykolaiivka and Muravka, aiming to envelop Kotlyarivka from the east and northeast. Finally, we move to the Novo Pavlivka Bodanka sector, where neutral cartographers report frontline adjustments along the T-0515 road between Yasenov and Andriivka. Russian forces have secured positions in the fields, but Ukrainian troops, likely anticipating encirclement, withdrew toward more defensible positions in the tree lines between Zaporizhzhia and Andriivka-Alexivka. Additionally, Russian units have made minor advances toward Bodanivka from the southeast and east. Over the past few days, the Russian advance in this sector has followed the Vovcha River, clearing tree lines and Ukrainian evacuation routes used during the battles for Konstantinivka. We're also seeing movement towards strongholds in the southeastern sector. However, despite all these reports and publications from neutral and pro-Russian experts, there is still no geolocated evidence confirming the presence of Russian troops in the southeastern part of Bodanivka. Next, we move to the southern Donetsk direction, focusing on the settlements of Vasila and Dnieper. Recall that several weeks ago, the Russian Defense Ministry announced in an official briefing that Vasila was under firm control of the Russian armed forces. Yet today, footage has emerged showing a Russian drone flying over Vasila, dropping leaflets urging Ukrainian troops to surrender. These images were clearly filmed in the village, casting doubt on whether Russian forces still control it. Judging by this footage, there is a strong possibility that Ukrainian forces managed to retake Vasila during recent counterstrikes. Alternatively, the video could be part of a Russian propaganda campaign, or even an error. However, the footage is definitely not archival, as it shows spring 2025 conditions, not March, when the area was still snow-covered and allegedly under Russian control. For now, we're not adjusting the map, but keeping this development in mind. Ukrainian forces may have regained Vasila, the most intriguing sector, the Dnieper front, Kinky and Tyahinka. Today, reports claim that Russian forces have fully cleared Kinky and the islands between Kinky and Tyahinka, securing full control over these areas. More explosively, several pro-Russian sources allege that Russian troops have crossed the Dnieper River, capturing positions on the Ukrainian-held southern outskirts of Tyahinka. However, no cartographers or geolocated evidence have confirmed this. The sole circulating video lacks verifiable location data. Pro-Russian analysts speculate this could mark the beginning of an operation to re-establish a foothold on the Ukrainian-controlled side of Kherson Oblast. For now, information is scarce and unverified. We'll need more time to assess the situation. Closing remarks, that's all for today, friends. Thank you for watching. If you found this analysis useful, please like and subscribe to stay updated. We'll continue monitoring developments and bring you confirmed reports.